all my best tips for revising A-level geography as someone who sat their A-levels last year and got an A in geography. Obviously, it's peak revision season right now. Exams are basically upon us. And these are all things I did kind of like last minute leading up to the exams. My first like revision technique, if you will, for last minute was basically going into my textbook and to the contents page. And I would go through every single topic and then look at the subsections under each topic. And I basically just asked myself for every single subtopic, would I be able to answer a 6 or a 12 mark question on this topic? And I don't mean just looking at it and going, yeah, I could probably give that a go. I would actually try and answer a question on each little subtopic. I'm talking the small subtopics as well. If I could, then great. And I would answer some questions on that subtopic just to make sure I definitely had it down. And if I couldn't do it, I would re-revise that entire subtopic, answer a couple questions on it, and then leave it and come back to it later and make sure I could still do it. I think the reason this worked so well for me was because it just like showed me where the gaps in my knowledge actually were. Because when you do past papers and past questions, you don't necessarily learn where like all of your weaker areas are. And obviously you don't have to do that all at once because that would take ages. Like I did that over the course of a couple of weeks. Before each paper, I would redo it for the topics on that paper. My next tip is in relation to case studies. When we're learning the course, we learn about a lot of different case studies. They can be quite hard to remember them all. To get the highest marks, you need to be putting the case studies into basically every single point you make. So you make a point and you follow up with a case study to support that point. But obviously that can be pretty difficult because there is a lot of content in geography. And if you're running out of time for revision, learning new case studies seems like quite a difficult thing to do. The good thing about geography is it's a very current topic. And what I mean by that is that you can use things that you see in everyday life as your case studies. So for example, for the coasts topic, I would find it quite hard to remember the different case studies from places all around the world. I do remember what the coastal defences at my local beach look like. If I needed a case study as an example of a seawall or some groins or rock revetments or something like that, I would use the name of that beach that I'd been to the summer before and then say the examples of the sea defences there and maybe even describe like the gradient of the beach, the type of sand, like if it was a pebbly beach, that kind of thing. And then just do like a really tiny summary of how the defences worked and why they were successful. And by analysis, I mean like a sentence or two at most. But that sort of thing just makes it look like you've done a lot more research. It doesn't actually take remembering anything new because you're using information that you already know. This is kind of obvious, but at this point I wouldn't start making any new flashcards. There are loads of flashcards available online on places like Quizlet, Gizmo. Gizmo was like one of my favourite apps to use for flashcards. Maybe it's just me, but I don't find making flashcards very useful for actually getting the knowledge into my head. And 9 times out of 10 you don't end up using the flashcards. So just at this point, don't waste your time making them. Obviously I've talked about using your textbook, but do not just use your textbook. There are so many websites and articles available online that's so helpful. There was one website, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I'll put the name on screen. And it has like all of the topics in A-level geography, at least for my course that I did, like broken down, and there's like little explanations on each topic. They're not like super in detail, but I did find that website really helpful. Please ignore that this is broken. I just love this highlighter so much and I'm just gonna keep using it till it's dead. This isn't really a tip, but basically when you're in the exam hall, try and be aware of timings a little bit. On the physical geography paper, obviously it starts with a 12 mark question on tectonics, or at least my one did. I was not aware of timings when I sat down in that exam hall, or I was, but I just kind of wasn't paying attention because when I'm in the exam, I'm like, okay, I need to get on with this and I'm not really focusing on like the board or anything else around me. But yeah, so I wasn't aware of timings and I ended up spending about 45 minutes on the first 12 mark question of the exam. I'm pretty sure anyone can tell you that that was an absolutely terrible idea. I spent the whole rest of that paper rushing and obviously it turned out okay for me on a whim, but genuinely if I'd had any more time on the 20 mark at the end, I feel like I would have got quite a few more marks and I was only 6 marks off an A star, so that was like, that really bugs me that I didn't do that. So just please be aware of your timings. If you don't know where to start with your revision, I would say revise the topic that you find the hardest first. Like I would always revise the carbon topic first because I found that the hardest out of all of them. This doesn't just have to apply for overall topics either, like you could do it within a topic. I found El Nino and El Nina really hard to wrap my head around. So if I was revising now, I would go to that first, get my head around that, and then do everything else. Once you've got the more difficult bit out of the way, you're not gonna like find it as tedious to do the rest of it, or at least I hope. If you have any more questions, let me know. I also did English and psychology and I got B's in both, so I'm probably not best to give you tips for those, but if you want tips, I can give you them anyway. Obviously I mainly post about books and movies on here, but my gap is nearly over and I'm starting uni at Durham in September. There'll be a lot more uni and study content coming your way soon. If you have any more study questions, let me know and I'll be happy to answer.